Hi, good evening, and welcome to episode number 7 of my series on paranormal events in my life. And this is focusing on the period of time between ending high school in 1973, and actually before 1968 there was a movie of note, and then at the end, maybe 1978, was the book actually that prompted this experience that I had. I wanted to say that this period of time in America, there were just some movies that came out that were just incredibly evil, and they just had that vibe about them. The first one was in 1968, and it was called Rosemary's Baby, and it was about Mia Farrow, and she and her husband move into this gothic building in New York, apartment building, and she meets all these creepy old people, and she and her husband are trying to have a baby, and then she gets pregnant, and all these people are doing all these strange things, and it's just really creepy, demonic movie. And honestly, I don't even know if I saw all of it. I think I did see it, but not sure that I saw all of it. And then in 1973, there was the movie The Exorcist, which came out, and that was a Catholic Jesuit priest who's called, and there's this little girl who's possessed, and some people thought that it was funny, that it didn't look real. I thought it looked quite real, and I only saw it once, and it was just horrendous, and I would never see that again. And so I think after that, I just decided that I was not going to see or read anything else that was ghosty, spooky, paranormal. I'd read and seen everything I could. There was a man named Hans Holzer who was the original ghost hunter, and I read all of his books. And as I mentioned before, there was Alfred Hitchcock and his creepy but also psychologically scary thrillers, and there were lots of scary things, but nothing on the level of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, and then the Amityville horror, which is what caused me to have another experience. And it came out as a book, and it's the true story of a family who buys this house, and it's really beautiful house and super good deal, and they know that there was the family before them who lived there was killed by this guy named Ronald DeFeo in horrific and horrendous ways, and it was just really an awful story, and unfortunately a true story. So fast forward to, I think, 1978 and 1977, 1978, and a book came out called The Amityville Horror about this situation, and I'd heard about the Amityville house, and I wanted nothing to do with it, and I said to myself, I'm not going to read that book. Well, I was in the mall. I'm in my early, about 20 years old, and I walked past one of my favorite bookstores, and I could see a book cubicle thing that had been set up, and there was this book, The Amityville Horror. And so I was curious, so I walked in, and I picked up the book, and I read the back of it. And this is what the Los Angeles Times said. It said, "A fascinating and frightening book, Los Angeles Times. The best-selling true story about a house possessed by evil spirits, haunted by psychic phenomena, almost too terrible to describe." In December 1975, the Lutz family moved into their new home on suburban Long Island. George and Kathleen Lutz knew that 1 year earlier, Ronald DeFeo had murdered his parents, brothers, and sisters in the house. But the property, complete with boathouse and swimming pool, and the price had been too good to pass up. 28 days later, the entire Lutz family fled in terror. So despite my best of intentions in walking in there, I felt compelled to buy this book. And so I did, and I was at the time a voracious reader. I still love to read. And so I took that book home and I read it. And I'm living by myself in a one-bedroom apartment. And so I read it, and I was duly terrified because the details of that book are just horrific, and the paranormal weird things that happen are just incredible. And so, of course, I was fascinated and read the whole thing. But then I was kind of scared of the book. Now, I'd never had that experience before. A book is a book, right? Well, this book kind of had a presence about it, and I decided to put it in my closet, my walk-in closet, and get it out of my sight. But every night when I went to sleep, I remembered that book was sitting on the shelf in there, and I really did not like that at all. So one night I woke up and I was experiencing a sleep paralysis where I could not move. I was awake, but I just seemed to be paralyzed. I could move my eyes, but the rest of me wasn't moving. And I felt like there was this giant hand that was underneath me with big claws, and it was going to wrap its fingers around me and just squeeze me. And when I had that realization, at that moment, I was able to come out of this paralysis, and it disappeared. But I remember that to this day, and I knew that it was because of that book. That book was really evil. It had the presence of evil in it. So I was working at another travel agency at the time, and there was a coworker, and her name was Sonia, and she and I sort of bonded over paranormal things, and she was a psychic, she thought, and all this kind of stuff. So I told her about this book, and I asked her if she wanted to read it, and she said, yeah. So I took the book to her, and I gave it to her, and I said, here, you can have it. I don't want it back. Thank you very much. So she takes it home and she reads it, and she comes back and she says to me, I read the book. It's terrifying. Here, you can have the book back. And I said, I don't want it back. She goes, no, I don't want it in my house. I said, okay. So I took the book back. And then I was talking to my younger sister, and I was telling her about the book, told her how scary it was, and she said she wanted to read it. And I said, okay, I will give it to you. And, I don't want it back. So she took it and she read it, and she was so terrified. And she felt that presence from the book too, just like I had and just like Sonia had. And so she did a very smart thing, because there's this myth or this old wives' tale about how spirits don't cross over water. So she took it down to a river and hurled the book across on the other side of this small river so that it couldn't come back to her, which I thought was a very good idea. I was like, well, that worked well. So it never came back, and she was okay. But I'm telling you these things not to encourage you to read these things, or watch these movies, but to tell you not to, because they really do have a presence and they really do have an impact. And it's not anything that you want to invite into your life. So don't do what I did. Now, after that, I really did not read paranormal things anymore. After Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and this Amityville horror book, and that was just the book. I never saw the movie. That would have been worse. Maybe not. Maybe books are worse because you have your own imagination involved. I don't know. But the point is that even though I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, and I continued, I've got even actually photographic evidence in regards to those, and even video, a little video, which I'll tell you about and show you later. Don't involve yourself in this stuff. It is not good. It doesn't lead anywhere positive. And these days, the graphics in movies are so real and so intense that it is even more terrifying. So learn from me and don't get involved with these things. And have a good night, and God bless.